Welcome to Advocate with Dr. Rufus Lowe, where we aspire each and every day to eradicate the silence of good people who allow bad things to happen. And in doing so, we can together provide a new and glorious path forward for all. Our conversation will be based on the teachings of my latest book entitled Shadow Tolerance, Your Guide to Accepting Racial Difference. Shall we begin?
Health and Human Services Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. on Capitol Hill amid turmoil at the CDC and backlash to his vaccine policy. His controversial moves have prompted major medical groups and more than 1,000 current and former employees across the Department of Health and Human Services to call on Kennedy to resign, many of them joined by some members of Congress, rallying outside the hearing today.
I cannot and will not stay silent while our public health institutions are dismantled.
Inside, Kennedy defending the direction in which he has taken the public health agency.
These changes were absolutely necessary adjustments to restore the agency to its role as the world's gold standard public health agency.
Today's hearing comes a day after Florida became the first state to move towards eliminating vaccine mandates for school children, a major shift that health experts are calling dangerous. But many health experts and even some parents are scared that ending vaccine mandates could put other children in schools at risk.
Very concerning. I would be concerned with other children who aren't vaccinated, and maybe possibly making my child sick.
I'm going to let him go wild on health. I'm going to let him go wild on the food. I'm going to let him go wild on medicines.
But he still needed to be confirmed by the U.S. Senate. During that process, he stated over and over that he is not anti-vaccine.
I am not anti-vaccine. I have never been anti-vax.
And if we listen to some of his previous statements from 2014, it might seem like he was telling the truth.
I am very pro-vaccine. I have 6 children. I had all 6 of my children vaccinated. I believe that vaccines are critical to public health, that vaccines have saved hundreds of millions of lives, and they save millions of lives every year. And they've succeeded in eradicating or nearly eradicating many of these epidemic illnesses.
In fact, at the time, his focus was mostly on mercury, and he was honest about his lack of knowledge about vaccines.
I know very little about vaccines. What I know a lot about is mercury.
However, now it's 2025, and we have a decade's worth of proof that RFK Jr. is, in fact, anti-vaccine.
There's no vaccine that is, safe and effective.
Remember how he just said his kids are vaccinated and he's pro-vaccine? Well, he said this in 2020.
If your kids were young now, would you give them the measles, the mumps vaccine?
No.
In fact, I don't understand how what he's doing is not perjury. I thought you weren't allowed to lie to Congress.
I have never told the public avoid vaccination. I see somebody on a hiking trail carrying a little baby, and I say to them, better not get them vaccinated.
He really believes kids who get even 1 to 2 vaccines are not as bright as those who are unvaccinated. Despite all that being widely available, he was confirmed in February 2025 as the U.S. Secretary of Health and Human Services.
Vaccines and the racial divide. Vaccines have long stood as one of the most effective defenses against disease, from smallpox in the 18th century to COVID-19 in the 21st. Yet their success has never rested on science alone. Vaccines depend on public trust, and that trust is fragile, shaped by history, by race, and politics, unfortunately. Today's debates over vaccine mandates, from Robert F. Kennedy Jr.'s criticisms to Governor Ron DeSantis and his refusal to require vaccines for Florida school children, reveal a deeper problem, the erosion of trust in public health. If vaccines are to continue protecting society, mandates must remain in place, not as a tool of coercion, but as a safeguard against misinformation and the misuse of politics. The value of vaccines is indisputable. Jenner's pioneering of smallpox vaccines saved countless lives, while Jonas Salk's refusal to patent the polio vaccine made prevention accessible to all. These achievements prove that vaccines are not merely medical breakthroughs, but moral ones as well, rooted in the idea that public health is a shared responsibility. But history also reminds us why trust is uneven. The Tuskegee syphilis study, which black men were denied treatment for decades, exposed how race and medical exploitation can erode confidence in government health programs. This betrayal still lingers, influencing vaccine hesitancy in communities of color today. That history underscores a central truth. Mandates are not just about science, but about restoring and maintaining trust. The recent pandemic threw this tension into sharp relief. The CDC, despite inevitable missteps, grounded its vaccine guidance in data and evidence. Yet figures like Robert F. Kennedy Jr. exploited public fear, portraying vaccines as instruments of corporate greed and government control. His arguments resonate not because they are scientifically sound, but because they tap into existing distrust, some of it justified by history, much of it fueled by conspiracy. If public health policy were left to such voices, life-saving interventions would collapse under the weight of suspicion. Governor Ron DeSantis' stance in Florida illustrates the political misuse of vaccines. By rejecting mandates for school-aged children, he claimed to champion parental freedom. In reality, this position weaponizes distrust of government for political gain. Vaccines are not a matter of private choice alone. They are a public good. One child's lack of vaccination threatens the safety of classrooms, communities, and the most vulnerable. DeSantis' rhetoric frames collective health as government overreach, undermining decades of evidence that mandatory vaccination policies protect everyone. The contrast could not be clearer. The CDC promotes collective responsibility. Kennedy amplifies distrust, and DeSantis transforms that distrust into political capital. In this clash, the core question is whether society values individual choice more than collective survival. History suggests that without mandates, disease thrives. Smallpox was not eradicated by personal freedom. It was eradicated by coordinated vaccination campaigns that left no room for political grandstanding. Mandates, then, are not an infringement on liberty, but a protection of it. They safeguard the freedom to live without fear of polio, measles, or COVID-19. They counteract both historical distrust and modern misinformation by ensuring that public health is not hostage to political whims. If America is to honor the progress vaccines represent and reckon honestly with the failures of the past, it must defend mandates as both a moral responsibility and a scientific necessity.